President Trump is facing widespread criticism for not specifically condemning white supremacists and hate groups in his initial response to the violence in Charlottesville.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time. It has no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives.
Let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. He's a congressional reporter for The Washington Post, and he joins us now from Washington. So, Ed, that statement from President Trump has received harsh criticism from Republicans and Democrats alike. Is this the most universal rebuke of the president we've seen since he took office? And also, Ed, in watching that, have you heard from the White House if the president's comments about violence on all sides was an ad-libbed comment that was not part of his statement for very good reason?
I haven't heard it directly, Vlad, but my colleagues who spent the weekend trying to sort this out say that he basically put it together himself with little serious consultation with other White House aides, many of whom weren't with him in New Jersey, frankly, ahead of that statement. And as for whether this is the most universal condemnation, I think it was, if anything, the fastest, in that we saw Republican lawmakers especially come out very quickly and explicitly say, bigotry, white supremacy, neo-Nazi groups, some variety or some combination of those terms is unacceptable. I personally and we all should repudiate them. And I think that was designed in part to put distance between that individual Republican lawmaker and what the president had said or perhaps had not said. And we'll see whether later today, in the appearances he has scheduled here in Washington, whether he addresses this again, goes at it explicitly, or perhaps once again holds off.
So now we've seen the CEO of Merck Pharmaceuticals, Ken Frazier, quit the president's manufacturing council. It's sort of the first bit of fallout from the president's remarks. Do you expect to see more fallout along those lines?
We'll see. He's the second business leader associated with some White House business council to quit. Elon Musk had quit a few weeks ago over other issues. This now another business executive just this morning saying he's got to get out of the way. What was notable about this is how quickly the president responded to it personally via Twitter, which just compelled his critics to say, if you can respond within less than an hour to this news, why did you wait so long over the weekend, and why did you say or not say what you said or did not say in response to what happened in Charlottesville?
A very good point there, Ed. And unlike President Trump, Attorney General Jeff Sessions called this an act of domestic terrorism. Vice President Mike Pence specifically condemned white supremacists and hate groups in his remarks on Charlottesville. I want to play a little bit of what the vice president had to say last night during a visit to Columbia, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
We have no tolerance for hate and violence from white supremacists, neo-Nazis, or the KKK. These dangerous fringe groups have no place in American public life and in the American debate, and we condemn them in the strongest possible terms.
Ed, what do you make of the disconnect between what we just heard from the vice president and what we have been hearing from the president of the United States? Why has it been historically, ever since Donald Trump decided that he was going to run for office, for him to distance himself from these hate groups, these white supremacists, these people that would commit acts of domestic terrorism in the United States? He had to be arm twisted into his, when he was asked to disavow David Duke and others, he sort of said, I disavow, and
after much pressure.
After a lot of pressure. What is going on there?
I haven't sat him down on the couch and tried to figure that out, but it's clearly something that just causes him to stop short when it comes to folks like those that were causing the disturbances and the violence over the weekend in Charlottesville, especially because once again, David Duke, the former KKK leader, the longtime political activist and Republican politician in Louisiana, called out the president explicitly and said, we are fulfilling his campaign's pledge and focus and we're you know, basically believing that they could do what they were doing because Donald Trump was president. And that was the same kind of language that tripped him up during the campaign, where he had to spend a few days eventually disavowing what Duke had said and saying he didn't know the guy. Here again, it has happened. And that is what is causing so much of this concern and this frustration, that the president, for whatever reason, can go and say what he says about the North Korean dictator, the president of Venezuela, about a guy who quits his manufacturing council, about the cast of Hamilton, because they criticize the vice president in his presence, but then can't, for whatever reason, do all of what he does with all those other groups in this regard. And I think, you know, if we go now another day or two without a more explicit comment from him, it's going to be harder for Republicans to stay with him. I'll grant the vice president one head nod, if you will, or tip of the hat. He made a point that in that press conference in Colombia, that perhaps the media was focused a little too much on Sunday with what the president did or did not do, say or did not say, versus the folks in Charlottesville who did what happened and sparked all this. And I think he's got a valid point there. Perhaps we should remember that that happened. Those groups did what they did, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Certainly, the president, as leader of this country, should be able to weigh in and bring the country together, and there are many who believe he isn't doing that. But what sparked this is perhaps central to all of this, and something we should keep in mind. And yet it's just another reminder that this is a president who operates differently, and for whatever reason just says or does not say certain things.
You know, though the vice president and Jeff Sessions were much clearer in their condemnation, they were also very supportive of how the president handled it. And the president is now meeting with Sessions and FBI Director Wray, and presumably there will be a statement later on. But I'm wondering, you know, when he comes out, when he sort of fails initially, is any follow-up statement really going to be good enough?
I don't know. That's a good question, Anne-Marie. I don't know. I think we'll just have to wait and see what if anything, it is like, and what he says and how he says it and with whom. Yes, the Attorney General was out this morning calling it domestic terrorism. H.R. McMaster, his national security advisor, said it as well yesterday. Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, didn't want to go there because justifiably he felt, look, I'm the CIA director, I'm not a law enforcement official, I don't want to weigh in on this. And then the vice president last night not only condemning it, but also suggesting that, you know, the country needs to really think about this and pray about it. And that is the more traditional sort of political and presidential response that I think many Americans were expecting to hear. So we'll see. But you make a good point. Even if he tries to clean it up at this point, it may not do enough. And a lot of people will inevitably probably step out and say very quickly, well, words are one thing, actions are another. And you wonder what actions he could take to remedy this situation and turn it around.
Well, one of the actions that many people have been calling for, Ed, is for the president to remove people within the Oval Office, within the administration, that have ties or links or have possibly in the past supported or leaned in the direction of these hate groups. And there have been responses on social media that perhaps the president should get rid of Steve Bannon, the advisor to the president, and others, Sebastian Gorka, folks that people say have, at the very least, given tacit approval of some of the things that we've seen over the past 6 months to a year. And I wonder, do they have a point? And secondly, as Anne-Marie points out, and you just basically said, if we know that Donald Trump is not somebody who backs down. He's not typically somebody who apologizes. And for a lot of people who support him, they like that about the president of the United States. They like that he stands firm in whatever his convictions and his beliefs are. And so a lot of people voted him for exactly that reason. But if he does come out today and he talks about this, will it feel as if somebody said to him, look, you've really got to do this, and that he's reluctantly doing it and not really doing it because he believes in the words that he's going to be forced to say?
We'll know it almost immediately, probably in his body language and his word choice. But let's just wait and see what, if anything, he says. As for the advisors that's been ongoing for a while. There's been a push really since the start to get rid of certain people that are around the president. But look, none of them are confirmable to Congress. All of them serve at the pleasure of the president. He has the right to employ whoever he wants in these positions, and so long as they're not found to be breaking the law or anything like that, they really, can continue to be there. And we know that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly has spent the last few days reviewing what everyone does in the West Wing, and obviously on the first day got rid of one of them, Anthony Scaramucci, because he didn't want to get into line. We'll see whether or not his ongoing review leads to any other changes. But obviously there are some who are going to take advantage of the situation over the weekend and say this is more reason to get rid of those people. And yet even before that, we know that this push has been on for quite a while. Remember also, people who support Steve Bannon, Sebastian Gorka, Stephen Miller, the senior domestic policy advisor, have been pressuring Trump to get rid of his national security advisor, H.R. McMaster. We've never quite seen a circular firing squad quite like this one, both inside the West Wing and among people on the outside. And it's those dynamics that John Kelly is going to have to deal with and sort out here in the next few weeks. And if he's able to do it, he certainly will have probably righted the ship and boosted morale a bit and perhaps brought some order and discipline back to the West Wing. But if it continues to persist, then Kelly may be facing the same problems Reince Priebus did before him.
We've never seen a presidency like this one, Ed. So yeah,
can't say that enough. You can't say that enough.
I don't think we can. I don't think we can. And as we've been saying, for some people, that's a good thing. But for a lot of people, given the president's recent poll numbers, not such a good thing.
Right.